All right, as I was saying, we're gonna have a short class. We're only gonna cover one chapter, and then you basically can start working on your midterm examination. The midterm examination is gonna be available until Friday at 11:30 at night, 11:59 at night. So you'll be able to take care of. Hopefully, you'll be able to take care of this in a timely manner. Let's see, got some of your peers coming in. All right. After tonight, please start submitting your rough drafts of your project. That way we can start working on this. Hopefully after every class or at every class, we'll be able to address any questions you may have regarding the project. And as we start tonight, you're gonna start seeing some of the information that you are going to have on your project, some of the items that you're gonna need to cover on your projects. I am sharing right now my screen with presentation. Please let me know if you can see it, thumbs up or, okay, great. Thank you, Jessica. All right. Uh, if you have any questions regarding the assignment, uh, let me know. Send me a note or an email, and then we can address it individually. That way I can, you can take care of all these items ahead of time. If you have any issues with homework that is missing, email me and we can try to address that right away also. That way you can take care of any items. Discussions, unfortunately, I cannot reopen. I can reopen the homework or I can email you a link directly on the homework. That way you can complete it. I will have to, since the homework at this point, any past due homework, it's late. I will have to deduct some points from the full grade that you will have received should you have completed on the allotted time. But anyway, don't stop submitting your homework or your assignments. We'll be able to work through this and take care of it. If you have questions regarding the product, I submitted, I have available, I may have submitted, I forgot, a quick rough draft of what it will look like. If you want to have a copy of it, let me know. We'll be glad to forward it to you. That way you know more or less what we're looking for. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to give me the skeleton of your paper because you already have selected a company. And if you haven't selected a company, you need to select one real quick. Uh, and then by the time you finish the assignment at the end of the 8th week, then you will have everything already set up. And basically your presentation comes out of the items that you already have set up on your rough draft paper, which in turn is going to become your full-fledged paper. Uh, Candy, I'd be glad to send you a copy. Send me an email. Anybody that wants a copy of a rough draft or the way the document will look like, just send me an email. That way I don't forget, and I make sure I have record that I have sending you the items. Okay. Sometimes these chats get lost and don't record correctly or whatever, but just send me an email and I'll be glad to give you a copy of the document. That way you have an idea what we're looking at. All right. If anybody has any questions on the assignments that are due right now or past due or things of that nature, just drop me an email. We'll be glad to discuss it. We'll be able to take care of it and everybody can address the issues. Rough draft is due tonight, but if you haven't completed, I will not crucify anybody. Just please give it to me before next week, before next Monday. That way I can take care of these things. The longer it takes to get these items together, the longer it's going to be, and the more difficult it's going to be to assemble everything and provide the proper grading for you. So uh, give me the information as soon as you can. I will work with you on time frames and time slots as we have allocated. Okay, so we're going into a chapter that by many is considered, by many views, is considered a controversial chapter. The chapter begins with the concept, does IT matter? It depends on who you ask. It depends on what your point of view, what your usability, what your capacity is regarding IT. Uh, IT is a very wide spectrum point of view. Management information systems, which is what most of us are end up working because of our degrees or of our positions. We manage data, we provide information, we manipulate data, and we provide that information for making decisions. If you are on the trenches, you actually produce code, you actually program, you actually design databases. That's another aspect of IT, is management information systems, but to a different level. So it's also part of it. But in any case, the concept of management information systems and the question, does IT matter, have come from questions that have been asked basically since 1991. If you think about it, the 90s, the beginning of the 90s was when the PC market began to explode, when everything began to move forward, and when accessibility of computers began to be the norm rather than the exception. When computer applications began their maturity, they were basically big boxes in rooms by themselves, providing network access to selective users. As you remember in your homework on ARPANET, the beginning of the internet was very limited. It was basically designed for certain people, certain institutions, certain groups to access it. It wasn't not until later on when after the dot-com bubble that things began to change. Before the dot-com bubble, that things began to change, and we began to see more accessibility. We have in 1981 a gentleman by the name of Eric Brian Jolfson, who published an article, and they call it the productivity paradox. And he basically says that technology has not made an impact in the way that should have been perceived or is perceived. And he draws certain conclusions about that work. Some of the main conclusions that he drew was that technology is subpar, that the real paradox that exists is that our inability to be able to document the contributions that we actually have is what is causing the problems, or what was causing the problems, according to this gentleman. When that happens, then a lot of people in the industry began saying, but why are you saying this? Because he, in essence, says that we cannot measure the inputs and the outputs. We are having a lag due to learning, an adjustment to that new learning curve that basically we have trying to assimilate these new technologies. He also stated that the redistribution and of profits was lagging and almost non-existent. And he began to pursue mismanagement of information technology. One can argue all the points are valid, but at the same time, we have to understand that is why it's a paradox, because it's such a big tool that we know now is everything that we need in order to continue to be proficient, to continue to be productive, because our world has turned in such a way. So, when we're talking about the productivity paradox, we have to understand that it's something that we need to have it. People have said no is not really what it's supposed to be or what is not there. But if you think about the items, the 4 items that this gentleman brought up, mismeasurement, lags, redistribution, and mismanagement, you have to understand it's a brand new technology. The learning curve for everybody was huge. Of course, there was going to be mismeasurements. We couldn't measure everything the way it was. Lags, of course, there is a lag of adjustment and learning. It's so new, technology is moving fast, we can hardly keep up with it. Well, when this technology happens, 1991, we were looking at almost a year to 2 years before technology turned over. Today, technology is turning at a rate of almost every 6 months. Every 6 months, we have something new. However, you and I have been accustomed to have technology on almost every turn. So our learning curve is a lot less than a person that has never seen technology. Companies are able to maximize the distribution of the material and at the same time able to maximize, minimize, or appreciate profits. One could argue that mismanagement of information technology is present. Well, it may be in some instances, but there is more management and proper management of technology than there is mismanagement. Anything new will have problems. So it will happen. It will be part of everything that is out there. But then we go to the real question of this chapter. IT doesn't matter. And this is as late as 2003 when this article was published in at the Harvard Business Review. The concept that IT doesn't matter comes from the fact that technology has become so prevalent that it's a commodity. Remember, we saw this earlier in the chapters when we are talking about the commodity that is computer applications. We no longer treat it as a tool, but more than an important part of everything that we need to have all the time that we're using technology. Therefore, it became a commodity. So, Carr, who wrote this, Nicholas Carr, who wrote this article in the Harvard Business Review, stated that because it's so prevalent, it's a commodity. And therefore, it should be managed like such, like a commodity, not like a application, not like a tool that is very important for us to use. He also went to say that the management of the company should see themselves as a utility of the company. When that happens, when he is making this assertion, he is basically saying that the people that make technology available, feasible, an item of every day for you and me that became a commodity. These people are utilities, not labor, not the most important part of the conversation, people. And that they should work to keep the cost down. Well, every company should try to keep cost down. One of the items that this study drove was the fact that to manage the technology that we had, we have to hire people that knew what to do with this technology. When the people were being hired, it increased cost because you needed more people, more qualified people. When you have more qualified people, salaries go up. You cannot lowball the salary because everybody wants to compete. Your competition will get the best person for the job. Therefore, your competitive advantage begins to go down because you can no longer position yourselves. So Card argues that IT doesn't matter because no competitive advantage will be gained through information technology. I will assert today that this almost is a very wrong statement because we use technology for everything. We depend on technology for everything. It may be a commodity, but technology has become the backbone of many companies, of many branches of information, of many branches of our companies. If we look at, for example, a basic example from the business point of view, enterprise resource management, supply management companies, or retailers that use a system of inventories that depends 100% on technology and communications. It is impossible to say that no competitive advantage can be gained because the company that first step into that realm of manage that technology correctly, that person will have, that company will have the advantage over everybody else. The differentiation will happen is when you have two companies trying to better themselves, trying to better their communication, trying to better their enterprise systems to have a higher level of competitive advantage. So even though it was said back in 2003 that no competitive advantage existed, today that is totally different. Companies depend 100% on that competitive advantage. As I say in my comment, the best thing about this article is the conversation that has ensued after the fact. People have to discuss technology and the place that technology has in a business. Now, depending on who you work for, depending on your company, depending on your style of business, depending on many issues like this, you will argue that technology is not as important on your company, or is not a item that is extremely important as far as managing information, whatever the reason is. But you will have to admit that eventually the management of that information is going to require you to have some kind of technology, some kind of information management system in place. That way you can gain that advantage. If you reject technology but your competition doesn't, guess who's going to get the advantage? Just because one person can transfer information or access information a little bit faster than you did. So it opened the discussion to have technology, and the fact that somebody said it doesn't matter, now we have to address it because IT does play a role in the competitive advantage of a company. The bigger you get, the more sophisticated you get, the more you're going to have to use technology because a single person or a group of persons cannot react as fast or process information as fast as a machine will do. So they cannot take care of some of the items that are required. The exact role of technology, that is the main topic of the charter. The technology plays an incredible advantage, an important advantage. And even though people have been saying since 1991 that it should be relegated to the back burner because there is no competitive advantage to be gained out of it, or because IT doesn't matter because it's a commodity, we have proven those decisions and those train of thoughts wrong. We have to have it. It has to be in place. It has to be embraced one way or another to a more or lesser capacity, but it has to be addressed. Again, you cannot be on top of your game unless you have the advantage over your competition. If your competition is using technology, you're going to have to use technology in order to gain that competitive advantage. So that goes into the next term. What is the competitive advantage? Uh, Michael Porter stated that a company has competitive advantage when it can sustain profits that exceeds the average of the industry. So he stated, well, there are different ways to obtain competitive advantage: cost advantage and differentiation advantage. So he gets into the nitty gritty of how are you going to achieve that profitability. We're not going to get into that in here because that's a whole brand new topic in business management. But it's important to know that competitive advantage has to exist, and you're going to achieve it one way or the other in order to survive, in order to stay afloat, in order to edge your competition. So information technology will be a factor in the cost advantage or the differentiation advantage of how to gain that competitive advantage. So whether we want it or not, we are talking about gaining competitive advantage by using technology. So Porter introduced some tools that we can use to try to gain an understanding and better develop a way to identify and structure that competitive advantage. He has what is called one item called the value chain, and the other one is called the 5 forces model. Keep in mind this because you will have to use both of these items on your paper when you write your paper. So when you are analyzing your company, you are going to have to look at competitive advantage from the point of view of the value chain at your company, and also the 5 forces part model that Porter introduces as part of how you view your company and how you analyze your company. So when we're talking about the value chain, can anybody see my my projection right now? Are you able to see it? See, perhaps we have to do a new share. Okay, just in case.
Same screen, sir.
Can you see it now?
Better.
All right. Is it too small?
It's okay.
Okay, so he's saying when we're talking about the value chain that there are two sets of activities that compose that value chain: support activities and primary activities. So, what are the primary activities in here? Your inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, services. What comes in inventory wise or tools for inventories, what goes out for inventories, for supplies, the operations that involve doing those that logistic, that warehousing, marketing, sales, and service of those services. All that is on top of, all that is below support activities, which are needed in order for you to have these primary activities in place. So look at it this way. For this model to function, you must have a series of activities, the support activities that are needed in order for the primary activities to take place. You need a firm infrastructure, you need human resources management, technology development, and procurement. You may say all of these are needed in order to maintain your primary activities. Whether they're the same format or a slight differentiation, say a small company may not have an HR office. The same manager, owner of the company is the HR office. Well, he is the firm HR, and he's also the firm infrastructure because he has a warehouse and he has an office. Technology development, he may have somebody that is an actual warehouse manager that knows about your supply management and operations and things of that nature, that is able to provide you the infrastructure for you to have all this operating correctly. Procurement, can you buy raw materials? Can you buy everything you need in order to maintain that productivity that you want? Can you buy the stuff that you need, whether you produce it, the raw materials, or can you buy already made materials for your warehousing? So all these funnels into what is called a margin. That is the profit margin that he is describing, that Porter described on his uh, initial assessment. What are the methods to obtain competitive advantage, cost advantage, and differentiation advantage? This margin is what is enabling you to maintain that level of advantage. So we're looking at the value chain first, and the company is trying to maintain that production, that capacity. And as I said before, there are two primary sets of activities and support activities. One could argue that primary activities are the functions that directly impact the creation of a product or a service. You have to have infrastructure, have to have an HR office, you have to have technology, you have to have procurement of some kind in order to support the creation of something that is going to be produced. Any widget, any kind of activity, any kind of service will require you to have a support activity in order to maintain that primary activity. So Porter states that the goal of your primary activity is to add value that is greater than the cost of the activity. Thus, if value is greater than the cost, you achieve that, you are starting to walk into the realm of profit. That's why it's so important to understand that the concept, the concept of the, come on, of the value chain is important because you are going to channelize what the company does to achieve extra margin, to achieve profit, and therefore continue to move up in relationship to your competition. Then he also defined Porter's five forces. So the Porter five forces is described as a framework for industries. You can apply this force, this model, to any industry, regardless of what they are. That's why in your companies, the ones you pick, when you do your analysis, you're going to identify every one of these items for your company. Who is the threat of products and services? One of the top forces that challenge the issue that somebody else could be producing something that can replace my product or service. So you identified who is your threat of substitution, who is producing the same thing that you do that is your competition. The bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of suppliers, supply power. When there is few suppliers from which your company can obtain product, the supplier has the upper hand on you. When there are many suppliers, you can control the cost. It's supply and demand, basically what is happening here. Who is your suppliers? Who are your suppliers? The least amount of suppliers you have, the higher the cost is going to be for you to maintain that advantage or to influence your advantage. Because if you have only one supplier, he can dictate to you how much it's going to cost you to obtain your raw materials. If you have many suppliers and you can outsource from many places, you can have more capacity for production. Again, when one sole supplier exists, your company is at the mercy of the supplier. What is the bargaining power of the customer? Buyer power. When the company and your competitors are providing the same service to a customer, the customer can choose who he or she or the company can go with. Sergio, this shares similar elements to a SWOT. Yes. So if you and your company are and your competition are providing the same service, customer can choose where to go. With few suppliers in the industry, then the customer doesn't have the bargaining power that they may have, that they may attain. Therefore, you command their attention to have business with them. We say, and you've seen it many times, thank you for your business. We know you have a choice when you do business with me. That is very important because there, in essence, the company is addressing the bargaining power of the customer. The customer always have a choice to go. The service that you have, the cost that you have to that customer is what is going to make him, she, or the company that you're doing business stay with you. Then you have the other item that is causing this tug of war in here, so to speak, the threat of new entrants or barriers to entry. The easier it is to enter into an industry, the more challenging will be to make a profit in that industry. If everybody is producing the same thing, everybody will enter into the industry, you will have a much tougher time trying to make a profit. Makes sense? When your competition and all your other competitions are doing the same kind of product, you will have a very diminishing return on the profit making capacity that you will have. If you try to produce something for which no special skills or licenses are required, that means anybody can step in and start making the same product. There is no differentiation. Anybody can make it, anybody can produce it. You can move on with it. However, if you get to the point that your product is so specialized, it requires a high skill of knowledge certification, there will be numerous barriers of entry. So with that increasing number of barriers to enter this business application, if you're the only one producing or one of the few producing it, you can reduce the threat of new entrants. So a very specialized format allows you to maintain that control over the threat of new entrants. One of the caveats that you're going to have is regulation. If you are too specialized and you happen to produce something that requires certain amount of certification by governments, entities, municipalities, so on and so forth, that is considered a threat to the new entrant because your product can be slowed down to production or derailed in production because you cannot get it out there. So it's a fine balancing act that you're working with. You have something so competitive, so specific, you can put it out there. However, it has to be regulated, or if it has to be maintained under patent or under government scrutiny, your barrier to entry becomes an item that is going to be always present on you, therefore becoming one more part of the forces that is stopping your business from achieving that profit. Finally, when there is competition among existing companies, it's a rivalry that exists. You will make an evaluation before entering into the market. You will notice that is that rivalry is strong, fierce. Your competitors are trying to gain additional market shares from the others, and that can result on very aggressive pricing, which affects customer support, affects customer loyalty, may lure customers away from the competitor. So a market with lower rivalry, it may be easier to enter and become profitable because the rivalry of the competition is manageable for you trying to enter brand new into a system like this. The higher the competition, the more difficult it will become for you to enter or to manage your profitability margin on these companies when you're trying to compare yourself to everybody else. A typical example today that people have been talking lately a lot is Amazon and Walmart. They are considered predators among retail industries. A Walmart goes into a town and the talk is that the Walmart will reduce the prices on everything, and they chop you and they chop your town and they chop your businesses to force customers to go to them. Why? Because the buyer power is going to go to wherever is the cheapest. It will affect you a great deal because if you cannot compete with that kind of volume, you cannot afford to lower your prices. You cannot afford to go head to head with a company like that big, like a Walmart or an Amazon. You will never be able to make profit. And no matter what you do, you will not be able to keep up with it. It's very difficult to compete. It's very difficult to maintain. It's very hard to maintain. So when you do an analysis of a company, it's very important to understand these 5 factors because these 5 factors will tell you whether the company is in a position that can move, achieve profitability, achieve competitive advantage, able to develop itself, even able to just come up on the market, which is what you want to know. Or am I surviving or am I dying of low starvation because I cannot compete or because my suppliers are not allowing me to work with them or there are too many people producing everything that I produce or everybody is making the same widget that I make. What am I going to do to be able to differentiate myself and maintain myself at that level of profitability margin so I can survive my business? Again, that's why it's important that this is understood because when you do the analysis of your companies for your project, you must understand what's going on. Who is the competition? Who are the competitive rivalries? Who are the buyer power? Why is there buyer power? Who are the new threats into the business? What are the businesses that are the threat to substitution to your product? Hopefully, you'll be able to address that information when you look at your companies and make determinations regarding that. So, one of the items that happens in businesses is a process called business process management. And the whole idea behind everything in here is, again, gain competitive advantage. It's been said that the true competitive advantage can be found with information systems that support a business process. So one of those business processes that are being discussed is called electronic data interchange or EDIs. So basically the electronic data interchange is helping you realize a competitive advantage by maintaining integrity on the supply chain electronically. So we're actually using a system to produce for us some kind of competitive advantage by using our electronic capacity with the new advents of information technology. So the business process management, the electronic data interchange, see, uh, my screen is not coming out. Okay, let's see if we can go to electronic data interchange. New chair. Okay, share. So electronic data interchange is basically saying communication in the company of business documents maintaining one standard format. As it says in here, the simple definition is electronic format that replaces paper-based documents such as purchase orders or invoices. So the advent of technology is saying that to do an item like this, to be able to start using electronic data interchange, is because you electronically are going to take advantage of all your paperwork. You're going to automate everything that you have in your company to enable you to do uh, these developments on your company. It's not for everybody. Not everybody requires a big system for electronic data interchange. As your systems becomes bigger and bigger, you will see the need for it. But a plain example will be the person that gets the purchase orders and needs to automate the system in such a way that he wants his office to know what is it that he has in the company. What is he buying? What is he being able uh, to keep out there working for him? So he goes and creates a simple database where he begins working on purchase orders. Who did he buy from and what did he buy and the products and the times and the dates. So a simple database is producing electronic reports that he can share within the company. In essence, he has created an electronic data interchange because now he's manipulating data, he's mining that data, and he's allowing the rest of his companies, the parties that are important to him, to see that information and to obtain and make decisions based on the information that he's doing. So you may have a manual order process, and then that manual order process can be exchanged for an automated order process. Again, the same computer database system in which you generate a ticket and that ticket generates an invoice and that invoice generates a bill and the bill generates a payment. Electronically, you are manipulating that information to transfer back and forth for you, and therefore that electronic data interchange exists. On a larger picture, you look at information that evolves throughout the whole company, involves multiple users, involves multiple offices, so it's needed. But it can be as simple as a plain database. It could be as simple as an office of two people exchanging information because it's faster and more efficient that way. You have what is called a collaborative system also. Collaborative systems are anything that we can share information, and we're sharing information among ourselves and more than one person can see it. As simple as a cloud drive, something like Google Drive, Microsoft SharePoint, WebEx, uh, iTunes, iCloud. We are sharing information in a collaborative way because we store somebody else's stores. It lets us access that information. It allows to view that information. We can share different formats. We can share different ways of doing storage of that information, spreadsheets, Word documents, tables, so on and so forth, through that cloud application, that collaborative tool. This is something that has evolved to the point that cloud systems have become basically a decision support system on its own. A collaborative system allowing electronic data interchange that eventually will migrate or will merge or mold itself into an electronic support system. So a decision support system, or DSS, is when you're making decisions or a decision using a conglomeration of things. As the graph shows, you have models, reports, questionnaires, observation, monitoring, periodic or permanent, whatever. They all come into a single place, a decision support system. And that decision support system enables you to view information based on that format that you have defined or has been defined for you. Protection plans, habitat conditions, results, activity reports, environmental systems, act response, whatever else that you're looking for from that decision support system. You make decisions that are very simple or very highly structured decisions, or decisions that are what they call unstructured. Structured decisions, you're talking about something that is constantly made. Unstructured is something that is not constantly made, is very random. And the most common thing that we're going to have is the structure, of course, because we're always going to use it, we always going to need it, and we always are going to be taking stock on the results of that in order to make decisions based on the output that we want. The most typical example of a decision support system with an structured uh, decision is an inventory system. When the inventory gets to a point that is below the threshold, the inventory automatically can make a decision of reorder the widgets, put them back up to the level that you want, make the order for the shipping to you or to the warehousing or to the product storage location for retail sale or for wholesale distribution. But the computer is actually managing that information. One can argue, well, people should be making those decisions. It is true because people are going to make those decisions. However, sometimes those decisions have to be made really fast, really accurately. And by allowing the computer to do so, you're allowing it to basically take control over that decision that you're looking for. Hopefully, you are reviewing this decision making to the point that when he's making a decision, he's making it on the best interest of your business and you. So we make orders, we re-inventory, we refill inventories, we make sure that specifically thresholds are automatically ordered. Uh, and we can actually say that any structured decision is good for automation. The more structure you get on the decision making, the more automation you can put. It's been said that uh, while structured decisions are good candidates, are not necessarily good to have on a decision support system. And the reason they're saying that is because they are so structured in the way they're built that you're actually not using the full capacity of the decision support system. You're actually not say wasting, but you're underutilizing the system when you're making decisions on a very structured application or a very structured set of information. However, if you have a set of unstructured decisions, many unknowns, this is where the decision support system comes into place. It helps you structure the decision making process. That's why it's so important or relevant to have a decision support system, because it will enable you to structure that unstructured format that you have when you have many things coming to you at the same time and you need to make a good analysis of what you have and make a good order or a good output result for that unstructured input. The more we can have these unstructured formats come together and start being organized, we are switching to a semi-structured decision making. When the decision is semi-structured, there is more cohesiveness, less time spent guessing or working how is the pros and the cons of the unstructured set of information coming along. So the unstructured this format that is semi-structured in the decision will be the best tool for the decision support system to work with. If that makes sense to you, is because a semi-structured decision is being described as the one that has the most factors needed for making the decision, but human experience and other outside factors can still make an impact in the decision making. The book describes medical conditions diagnosis is the best option for a decision support system when you're working with semi-structured decisions. The collaborative system, the DSS system, will allow you to make a diagnosis because you know so many parameters that will allow you to make a good judgment or allow the computer system to make a good judgment when it comes to making those decisions. But because human factor is coming into place in here, that means humans are stepping in and can override or can recalculate, or we can force the system to redo the information that is making decisions on. While it can be overruled, it's not necessarily the best option. It allows you to better calibrate the decision support system so you have better decision making and more productivity, so to speak, because you will be able to have the decision making done fast and accurately rather than wait for a person to actually review the information, compare the information, and make decisions on the information. If many decisions are read simultaneously at once, that's where the decision support system with the collaborative system comes into place because you need an extra set of ears, an extra set of fingers, an extra set of thinking brains to be able to make decisions and fast. A simple spreadsheet will allow for input of specific variables and calculate outputs. If then else logic models are introduced to make decisions, the document will make decisions based on input specifically. The system is designing to analyze and make recommendations based on specific rules and concepts that have been programmed into it. The system reports the results and the key indicators to be used in making the decision. So, in essence, the decision support system will enable you to get to the point to obtain a competitive advantage because you can make very good decisions about products and innovations without compromising yourself or to the point that you spend too much time thinking and not being able to pay attention to details that are important to outdo or outmatch your competition. All right, let's see. In essence, this has been our chapter on does IT matter? As I said on the beginning, when the question was asked, does IT matter? Can we actually have some kind of good results about it? One can arguably say yes, IT does matter. IT is important. Without it, not too many decisions, fast decisions, accurate decisions can be made. That's why it's important to understand the concept behind what you have, how you have it set up, what kind of decisions are you going to do, and what are you expecting of the decisions. You can always pump money into something. If you haven't made the best determinations, that information is not going to be accurate or good for you. In that case, IT really doesn't matter. Just because you pump money into a company doesn't mean that it's properly configured to provide the information that you want or the tools that you want in the way you want them. So this is all we have for this chapter. I told you it was going to be a short presentation. So now we can stop this presentation and basically I'm going to